It's hard to believe that this great city was once a heaping pile of rubble, but it's true. It happened on December 3rd, 1922.
Hi, I'm Brian Garrison.
I'm Nick Stevens.
And I'm Clarissa Johnson, and we're here in Astoria, Oregon to tell you about the Astoria Fire of 1922.
The reason the fire was so hard to put out was not that the fire department was understaffed. There were 4 fire stations, 5 fire trucks, and 23 firemen. Also, the city had a fine water supply, catering to all sides of the fire. So why did the fire cause so much damage? Because almost everything was wooden and the open under construction stuff. Open under construction is where they build the city on pilings, forming tunnels under the city. Why was the city built on pilings?
Again, the city was built on pilings because it was constructed over a tidal flat. If you think about the topography of Astoria, it's constructed on a hillside, and the area where the downtown was essentially a small bay. Those that were developing the town thought it was easier to develop out over the water than to try to scale the hill, which was extremely muddy and extremely steep.
We read that people figured that there would be a fire at some time. Do you agree that if it hadn't happened then, it would have happened sometime?
Yeah, it was inevitable because there were so many buildings that were made out of wood, and buildings were so close together. The timbers underneath the buildings were made out of creosote, and the air could flow underneath, and it acted as a kind of draft furnace.
How do you think the fire started?
The fire, there is an article here by Arnie Abrahamson, who said that the fire was started accidentally through carelessness in the basement of a store where some people were getting rid of some papers, and the papers got close. The packing material for boxes got close to a flame that they had down there. I think it was for their heat. And the fire just caught from there, and it went really fast.
Timeline of the Astoria Fire of 1922. 2:12 a.m. alarm came in. 2:30 a.m. pool room and restaurant burnt up. 2:45 a.m. east end of block consumed by fire. 3 o'clock a.m. entire block consumed by fire. Firemen moved to Bond Street. 3:02 a.m. fire reaches Bond Street. 3:15 fire gets too large to fight. 3:30 a.m. Portland is called for help. 7 o'clock a.m. a train from Portland started coming to Astoria. 10 o'clock a.m. the train arrives in Astoria. 1:30 p.m. fire is out. It lasted for a total of 11.5 hours. However, if a wind had been blowing in a certain direction, damage and time would have been much less.
And then it went up to about Exchange Street. The courthouse was never involved in the fire. It had no damage from the fire, or nothing serious anyway. All the records survived the fire. And then it came, it was in the east end, about 16th Street, something like that, and then up to, this building survived the fire. It wasn't damaged. The hospital survived the fire. The hospital was on the next block west of the Heritage Museum. They dynamited some buildings that they thought might help spread the fire.
One of the interesting things that occurred was that the fire stopped short of all the churches. For whatever reason, it didn't burn any of the churches in the downtown.
How do people describe the fire?
Oh, there in the headlines the night or the day afterwards in the newspaper, it talked about winged demons coming upon the city, and the aftermath was a desert of ash, and Astoria rose itself from the ashes. So those were kind of some of the descriptions. There's also much more personal descriptions in that this was shortly before Christmas. And in speaking with some of the people who survived the fire, they knew full well that many of their Christmas presents were destroyed in the fire, so there was this added kind of sadness that occurred, certainly for a lot of the kids in the area.
Yeah. How did people's lives change because of the fire?
There was approximately 2,500 people that lost their homes. in that fire. Homes being, they lived in hotels or in apartments down in the downtown area. A result of that was that many of the, or at least some of the larger houses in Astoria were converted to apartment buildings. In other ways that the people's lives were changed, many of the people didn't have insurance, so they lost everything in the fire.
It was really quite an inconvenience for everyone because the downtown stores were all burnt. So anyone who wanted groceries had to go quite a distance to get them. Had to change their way of life. And people who lived at the other ends of town, Upper Town and in Uniontown, they didn't have quite that problem.
In what way did people become more cautious after the fire?
They became more cautious because they rebuilt the downtown using concrete. For instance, the Elks Temple Lodge, when it was constructed, it was supposed to be the most fireproof building in the state. They were more cautious with the reconstruction of the street system in downtown. It's called a chair wall construction. It's constructed out of concrete. And what that means is if you're going from curb to curb, here's the sidewalk here, here's the curb, going straight down are some columns. Below the surface of the road, it goes like this, so it kind of looks like a chair. In this section is where the utilities go, things like the gas lines go, things that could explode. From this curb to this curb, it's all filled in with sand. Therefore, again, creating a block and being a little bit more fireproof.
What is, in your opinion, the most important change due to the fire?
Well, I think that the whole town is a whole lot safer because they had to build firewalls and they had to follow the recommendations made by a large convention of, I don't know if you call it convention, of insurance adjusters who came here after the fire.
I just spoke with an engineer who's done the research on all the bridges up and down the coast, all the historic bridges up and down the coast. I described this to him and I've never seen anything like that before in my life, and he was very, very interested. So this system, which we use in Astoria, it may be unique. We do know it's special. Yeah. And part of the beauty of it was that not only did it have some fire, resistance qualities to it, but it allowed the streets and the buildings to be constructed independently. So in some cases, the buildings came up before the chair wall was constructed. In other cases, the buildings came up afterwards. And you can start to see some of that when you're wandering around downtown, and all of a sudden, there's a parking lot that's a lot lower than you are. In most cities, they fill in the blocks. In our city, we just filled in the streets and left the blocks down at the original level.
Many families lost their homes as a result of the fire, so they had to go to homeless shelters to get food, water, shelter, and clothing. People and organizations helped out too, such as Mabel Tucker, who donated a great deal to the fund. The Red Cross also had many buildings where people could get clothing, food, and shelter. About 1 month after Christmas, many buildings started to be rebuilt. They estimated there was about $15 million in damages, so it would take about that much to rebuild the buildings. Although the people didn't raise $15 million, they still rebuilt very nice buildings. About 8 to 12 months later, the buildings started to reopen. People started to regain their homes and old lives back, but it was hard for some to get used to the new buildings and broader streets. Finally, Astoria is the safe and fun town we all know and love today.